15th meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Okay. Doug Runner.
Here.
Randy Swiggin.
Here.
Tammy Roll.
Yes.
Kevin Engline.
Here.
Candace Monte is absent.
And she should be gone shortly. Pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone to address the committee on any issue. Please observe the time limit of 3 minutes. While the committee encourages input from residents, it may not discuss or act on any issue that is not duly noticed on the agenda.
I have no comment from anybody online, and I have no comment email sent to me.
I did get a text from Seth Johnson who said Zoom is telling me the host has another meeting in progress. Zoom into the public safety committee. Do anything or might have a bad code.
Check it. No.
And you're on Zoom, right?
Yep.
And that's usually pretty straightforward.
Yep. It's the same code. Wonder if, let me. Seth, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. I think the issue was the ID number doesn't match what's on the link. The link worked, the meeting ID doesn't.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yep. Okay. All right.
Sounds good. Welcome, Seth. So we did the pledge and public comment. Seth, do you have any public comment?
Yeah, I mean, it'll keep it real quick. I was mainly just looking for more information and listen to the discussion about the pedestrian crossing flags. My main comment is I'm wondering if it's if there locations that are in mind yet. The way it's kind of written in the minutes and stuff is it's almost like a solution looking for a problem. Like, well, we want to do these flags and now we're going to look for sites to put them. The studies are pretty limited on the effectiveness of them. They probably have a pretty short-term benefit, and obviously they're very low cost. As you've seen in some of them, I think the flags tend to disappear, so a matter of replacing them. But again, I'm more curious just to hear what some of the problem areas are, because I'd be interested in knowing.
And I also think with your background too, I've read through the materials that were here tonight, and I know that we had them 10 or 15 years back, and it looks like that's when a lot of people kind of started. So I'll be interested in your feedback and input too when we get to that agenda item, Seth, if you stay on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Item 5, approval of minutes from October 25th, 2022 PSC meeting.
I will move to approve minutes.
Motion Randy, second Tammy. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say the same. Report of PSC officers, chairperson. I'll be very brief. I would like to thank the EMS, fire department, and police department for their efforts in 2022. You helped make Cross Plains in our area a safe and great place to live. Thank you. And then when we look at setting the January meeting, let's look at maybe adjusting the time 7:30 or 6. I think Tuesday still worked great, but we can talk about that also next week. Any other PLC members want to report?
I'm sorry, we're on number 6.
We are on number 6. And we have Seth on. So that was the chairperson report. Any members have anything you want to say to that? First responders, unless either of them came online.
Neither one of them came online, and I did not hear from Erica, so no report from her. Justin sent me a text basically saying he wasn't going to be able to attend because he had a meeting conflict, but he had no report to provide.
So it'd be good to get reports. Report for Cross Plains Police Chief.
Okay, and I'm reporting for October. In October, we handled 226 calls for service. We are at 2,500 calls so far this year. Last year, we had 2,678, so we're going to bypass that quite a bit by the time it's the next 6-7 weeks. Nothing major to report with regards to the calls, same type of calls that we normally get. As far as our hiring process is going, we are getting quite a few applicants, several of them that are very qualified. So I believe we'll be able to find somebody and then establish a eligibility list for any other retirements or positions. We are hopeful that the village board will pass the budget, which includes $20,000 for part-time officers, which will supplement my staff. It's a fix. I mean, I think that the board, it seems to me that the board is very supportive of adding an additional full-time officer and moving the department to a full-time 24-hour department, which would require an additional officer to offset that. So we're looking at least 2 positions in order to probably cover 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So that's where we're headed. I believe that the board is looking at that and seeing how we can get to that. But that's where we're at. So I do have 2 retirements. Lisa Davis will be retiring beginning of January after 28 years of service. So we'll be hiring for the administrative assistant position. Hopefully, I would imagine that's going to be on the agenda for the village board meeting to approve, and then we'll start a hiring process for that. One of the items that I'm pushing for and that's recommended is her position right now as she sits as the administrator for the department, or assistant. Sorry, she's the administrative assistant, but then she also doubles as the clerk of court. And in reality, that shouldn't be happening. There's state law that talks about separating those things and making sure that there's a clear separation between those things. So that's a very dated way of dealing with staffing, and a lot of smaller departments do that, where they tack on another role and then, increase pay and then you have to do more work. But in reality, that position it should be separate. And so we'll be pushing for that to be separated. There's clear state law that talks about, that separation. This is how silly it is. So somebody will call downstairs, so she has a phone number for the courts. She'll answer that, and then they'll say, hey, we need a record for this or that. And she's like, you have to call the police department for that, because I can't. And so she hangs up the phone, and then the phone rings, the other one, and then she tries to change her voice, which is just like, that is so wrong. And she does a good job, but I've heard her, and then she gets off the phone, and it's just embarrassing for her, because she's been doing a great job for many years. Yep, 1995 is when that was changed over, but the law changed like not too long ago, where it basically said it just creates an unethical feeling, because police are writing citations and dealing
Yeah.
with court processes. And she's supposed to serve as the clerk. So she's just supposed to, file papers, not know all the ins and outs of what's going on. So it's just inappropriate. So the village attorney has recommended that be separated. And so we're gonna move for that. And then Scott Kretz will be retiring 1 day later. So our plan is to have a retirement party for both of them. It's slated for January 7th from 1 to 4 at the fire department. So if any of you can attend, but we'll post it and get it out. That's pretty much it.
I'm curious, is Scott planning to stay in the area?
He is planning to stay in the area, and I try to encourage him to be my primary part-timer. But he, like most officers that put in 33 years,
He's
are like, sorry.
I was maybe even thinking committee member.
And he may.
After he gets a rest.
He may. He did tell me that he is going to be working full-time days. So he's moving to a private sector type job. So, I mean, his time could, definitely, he may be interested in a committee. And we're still gonna look for him, as we build the new department.
Yeah.
Bring him in and see if he would still be part of those, projects and things like that. So,
Very good.
okay, that's it.
At the January meeting, and we can talk about it when we set the next meeting, I would like to recognize those two employees for their service as well. Moving into committee discussion, item number 1, discussion regarding and possible action regarding a public nuisance ordinance. We saw the draft that Chief Tony has submitted, and I'll let Chief talk a little bit about the attorney discussion and how the draft came to.
It should be in your.
Yeah, it's on
packet.
that packet. Yeah,
Okay.
just go back a couple.
So this was prepared by a village attorney. He and I had a couple conversations about it. I think part of our discussion last month was making sure that the fines were significant. And if you see basically under penalty, it goes to $500 for first offense and $1,000 for every second or subsequent offense. So basically, this ordinance would require that if there is a continual location where there is continued problems, like, three times, that we bring in the owner, and then the owner has to abate that problem. If the owner does not abate that problem, from that point on, they would then be held accountable for violation of this specific ordinance. This was drafted as part, I think the village attorney did some research, see what was best practice and those kind of things, rather than isolated citations for each, violation if we have an issue there. He thought it was a little bit of a slippery slope to try to cite the owner when he's not present during these incidents. But if you have a documented 3 incidents where you say, look, we have a habitual situation at your property, you need to fix it, abate this problem, and the next time there's a problem, then you hold them accountable. So it'd be and it would be added to basically the tax roll. So I believe that he would be he'd be in violation. So it'd be a fee rather than court. So it's not like we would issue a ticket like we normally would. This would be a fee assessed to him, and keeps us out of court. And the village attorney thought this was the best route to go.
What do you guys think?
I guess my only question is the fee structure for the imposed fines, or however you want to call it. My fear is that you have between $10 and $500, and I would assume by the time that a fee is going to be imposed, you've probably been there a few times and dealt with this, and it's been a problem. I don't want it to be a $35 fine for the
No.
utilization of the.
I don't know why I think that the fee, he included 10 to 500, but he and I clearly spoke about it being 500 for first offense.
I wouldn't be uncomfortable with 1,000 for the first offense, because by that time,
Yeah, we've
You
had
would
three,
not be uncomfortable
Yeah, I
with
think,
1,000?
yeah, he just thought it should, have a little bit of a step, because even think about in a case the case that was brought to us, that's the example. It's happening so often that it's,
Right.
if you issue this fee of $500, we're probably gonna be there the next day. And then it would be 1,000 after that. So he thought, the abatement would be the best route to go. I honestly don't know why there's that $10, and I can ask him why he thought that was necessary, but
Yeah, I mean, because there's already been multiple problems by the time they're.
yeah, I guess.
I think
just wanted to make
500 for
sure
the
that was
first and 1,000 for the
Represent,
second.
the fee represented the impact it's having on the village and the department and around the property.
and obviously this would go to village board, so I have the document, so I can just delete that and then
Well,
present it to the.
Randy, would you be comfortable if it was just in an amount of 500 for the first offense and
Yes.
1,000 for a second offense?
Yes.
Because I think that's what I'm hearing is we want some bite right away.
And I'm sorry if I missed this, but how do we keep him or them, whoever, accountable? Like for the 500 and the 1,000, like
Goes
where
on
does
the
it, goes
tax
to
roll.
taxes? Yeah, okay, okay.
So it's an assessed fee, no different than, let's say somebody doesn't mow their grass and it's become a violation of ordinance,
Mhm.
and the village goes in and cleans it up, and then they can assess a fee for all that they did and put it on the tax roll.
Yes, that's exactly.
And so, by the time it's done, let's say there's 5 offenses, it's gonna be $4,500
Right.
assessed to a tax.
Right.
He's gonna fix it. He's gonna fix that. You would hope. So that's a pretty significant,
Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
so.
So the only thought I have is that range is obviously is big, between 500,000, 10 to 500. And I just don't know as far as the frequency for consistency on how this is done.
Mhm.
If that range is there to offer some type of,
The hard part is
Discretion.
just
Some type of
deciding
discretion,
who's
right.
who's going to make that decision.
well, and that's why I'm just wondering if that $10 though is also there because I'm not sure. Just thinking about the risk of singling when to use it and when not to use it. And maybe I'm just thinking out loud here.
there has to be 3 of them to get the first offense, right?
Yep.
Mhm.
And I don't wanna
So 3,
overthink what Paul might have done, but he might have just copied that from the
Mhm.
other
Yeah,
one.
So 3 to get to the 500?
Yep.
3 to get to the first
See,
offense. This is
That's
the,
That's
I
what
this
agree,
is the
that's the
land,
problem.
this is the property owner.
Right,
And the person who
3,
lives there.
so
has had
basically,
least
if you look
3.
at the notices, whenever the chief determines that 3 or more nuisance activities resulting in enforcement action has occurred at a premise during a 12-month period, then then that starts the process. The first process is to notify them in writing that you need to abate this problem. And then they have so much time to abate that problem, and it's immediate. And
Right.
you have to immediately abate it. We've had 3 enforceable incidents where they've been cited for whatever reason, disorderly conduct, possession of drugs, whatever. And then if we get another incident, obviously that problem has not been abated.
right.
So then that you would also cite the person who's doing it, but then you would assess a $500 fee to the homeowner. And then if there's another incident, of course, you still take enforcement, but now you're assessing a $1,000 fee to the homeowner. And it's every.
So after the first 3,
Yeah,
then it continues to go,
After the,
But you gotta hit
there's no
3
fine
before it
on the
starts.
first 3.
right, so
We're
we have
working
to
to try
hit
to
the
abate
first
and
3
fi-
and
yeah.
get the 5, and then it's
This
500.
this is a problem residence.
Right, because he's already had, but
So that's why I come back to
No, and
the third kid.
I think Randy's,
right.
I think Randy's comment is what we as a committee would like to see as the forfeiture is 500 for the first offense, 1,000 for
Yes.
second, and each
It has to
subsequent.
mean something.
I think if you can just take that
Yeah,
between out and just say.
yeah, I
in an
just think
amount,
it's those two.
500 for the first offense, 1,000 for second subsequent, because we want them to take action.
100%.
We
And
don't
this-
want to keep finding them.
And this is all, during a 12-month period. So I mean, you kind of think of, it starts when those events started.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like your point system on a driver's license, right?
Right,
You
yeah,
get them and then after the end, you kind of start over again. The good thing is that I can only think of maybe 2 places where this would be even applicable,
okay.
so it's not like we're having tons and tons of these kind of problems.
It's just
No, but the
there.
places that they're applicable, like, then we need to, it has to be worth it.
Mhm.
I mean,
No,
right, like,
No, that's my thought too.
yeah, like, it has to be like, 10, again, the range, what we're reading is 10 to 500, like, that doesn't,
Yeah,
Because we're gonna trust the discretion of the police department in the first
Yes.
place.
yeah,
You're working and maybe it's minor, maybe it isn't. By the time we get to this.
yeah, I
we
mean,
got
3
problem, we need
offenses,
to
no
go,
matter
We
if
gotta
they're
get it going.
no matter if there's 3 minor ones, it's enough. It's enough resources. It's enough. I
right,
mean, obviously they're not getting it,
There isn't any delay in the arguing of why am I getting 500 when
Nope.
it could be 10 to 500.
Nope.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah,
just
no, you're
point-
right.
Yeah, then you're done.
Or
And
yes.
my hopes
landlord
is,
A hears that landlord B was only fined $25, why am I getting 500?
exactly, yeah.
yeah, and that,
Same kind of
it
argument.
takes away the argument.
Yeah.
And my plan to do, I mean, because really right now we only have 1, is in hopes, once this passes, which I hope it passes at the village board, then I'm gonna call that landlord, because I told him we were working on this and just kind of forewarn him before this even becomes an issue.
Mhm.
And just say, I want to send you a copy of this ordinance. It will be enforced, strictly enforced. So you need to start thinking about abating that problem, because it won't be long before you are now getting assessed these major fines.
Should
Yeah,
we,
different nuisance activities, if I remember right, when that family was here, something was said about the tenant had threatened their children.
Mhm.
Was there a firearm involved?
Mhm.
No, okay.
Well, and this
I didn't see
doesn't
firearms.
cover, this wouldn't cover that. I mean, we already have ordinances against that.
Okay.
And that's specific toward the person doing it. This is the whole landlords, people that aren't on scene, accountable for their tenants.
would, you like us to do a motion to support it and then have it at the next board meeting?
I think, I don't know why we would need to bring it back.
I agree.
I mean, I think you just make a
I
motion.
think we
and
make
move it.
that, I would entertain a motion that includes the changing the amount to 500 for the first offense and
Yeah.
1,000 for the second. I would entertain a motion that supports that in this ordinance recommended to the board from the public safety.
Agreed.
Would somebody make that motion?
I'll
Sounds
make
like
that motion,
Candace
yeah.
just did.
And I'll second.
Okay, got a motion from Candace and a second to voice our support to the village board for this new ordinance with the change for $500 for the first offense and 1,000 for each subsequent offense.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed signify by saying the same. Well done. Next agenda item is the flags.
So just a little history. So I talked to Jerry, I mean, Jerry obviously knows a lot about all of the doings of the village, and he said that those were all over a few years ago, and during construction projects and different things, they just kind of came off the poles and nobody replaced them, and they just kind of moved away from them. But according to Scott, who I spoke to today about specifically about this, he said that they were up and down all of Main Street and all of Church Street at all the
Yes.
pedestrian crosswalks.
By
And-
St. Francis Glacier up there, up that way, and then
And he-
multiple places on it.
Were they used? And
Yeah.
Was it a positive?
Yeah.
When you
And-
could find them.
And so technically, or the way they used them is Jerry would make the holders, and then the police department would supply the flags. And once the flags came up missing or some kid took them, then the police department would just replace them. So what I gave you guys in the packet is a whole system, you know, and that it's $200 per intersection. But if we're just looking at flags, it's about $30 for 12 flags. So, and you can get them off of Amazon. So it's not that expensive. We have that grant where we could fit it for public safety for the ARPA grant. So, I mean, the money could easily be found. The complaint that we received, and it was multiple, is kids are doing a lot more walking. They're not using the bus system as much. They're all over the place. And the main complaint was right out here on Brewery and Church. You know, and anybody who lives here knows that in the morning it's traffic all the way back, and kids are having a hard time just getting across the street. And so the solution was to bring back the flags. You know, as some of the research showed that, you know, they're only as good as if they're used, and there's some research that suggests that they're not even that useful. But I mean, it's you know, we can't go out and buy those yellow flashing beacons. They're like $10,000-$12,000 a piece. And so the citizens requested that this committee consider it.
DOT also will not approve more of those flashing lights in
Yeah.
a certain amount of space, otherwise they don't get as much attention or something. I remember when the 14 project went through, we wanted 2 other lit up, and they basically said no, because that will take the effectiveness away from the 2 that you have.
I mean, it's all a matter of opinion. I think, you know, even the beacon, we have the crosswalk there by the school has those yellow flashing lights, and people hit them and people still don't stop. I mean, they're not technically meant for you to stop. They're requesting for you to slow down and come to a stop because somebody wants to cross, but technically they're not stop signs. So people can go through them as long as nobody's off the curb. So I mean, it's just, it was asked of me to put it on the agenda. So that's why we've been discussing it for 2 meetings.
Has your officers weighed in on, I know Jerry has a little bit, but
Scott said that, you know, they were used. I mean, they found, you know, that people would take them and you'd have to replace them. And he also said, you know, with all the sidewalks and missing sidewalks, you know, there's always that thought that anything will help. So like, for instance, Park Street now, you know, if you remember during the construction, they opened Park Street and made that no parking all the way up to the school. And they've asked us to continue that no parking, just so people can walk, even though they're walking right next to cars, but that marking kind of provides that walk. So any little bit helps. And I think that's what these couple of families were concerned with, and thought these are not expensive fixes, and, you know, could they work? You know, so they wanted us to, I said, well, there's obviously a process. I'd have to bring it to the, you know, to you guys, and then, you know, obviously bring it to the board, because even though they had them before, at some point they got rid of them, and that'll be something new. Even though they're not going to sustain them, it is going to require that village staff make, you know, those holders, and then we've got to, you know,
Right.
pay for flags.
And people even know that they're there. Like, do you know,
Mhm.
I'd be interested in Seth if he wants to make a comment. He works for DOT, and is he still on?
Yep.
Seth, are you able to unmute it?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Yeah, like I said, there hasn't been a lot of real good analysis. I mean, there's a lot of anecdotal studies, and, you know, there are a few out there that, you know, talk about that there is an increase in yielding with the use of them, but no like kind of long-term studies to show that affects last over time, or is it just a short-term one? You know, whereas some of the other treatments obviously have been studied in much more detail, like those rapid rectangular flashing beacons, et cetera. And I do agree with you about the spacing. I mean, I'm not aware of what the DOT said when built on, you know, where there were additional locations that you wanted that they wouldn't grant. There's a few different, you know, guidelines in there. Some would say, you know, 1,200 feet between those kind of beacons and things. So I get that this could be an inexpensive way. And as Tony said, you know, any little thing helps to an extent. So I'm not necessarily opposed to this. I just think that the data is not there to really support long-term use of these. If there is a
Go
pro,
ahead, Seth, I'm sorry.
huh?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, I was just gonna say, I know, I don't remember how it worked last time. A lot of places that use these do like have sponsors. So, you know, if there's a business or an organization that is willing to replace them instead of, you know, or the village having to do that, you know, that could be something to explore, especially if there's certain locations that, you know, if there's location in front of a business.
Yeah, they might adopt it.
Would be willing to supply some things like that. So again, it's just, there's a lot of anecdotal stuff out there, not a lot of hard evidence.
And so I'll just make 2 comments and then I'll open it up. The first comment, I do believe if at the inexpense, it might be worth doing a pilot around Park School in St. Francis probably, because those are busy areas without the beacons. What I witness and see by pedestrians, bike riders, drivers in our small community, they don't even know the basics of a crosswalk. When I stop for somebody on Main Street, they're surprised. If, you know, not one of the lighted ones, but if they're coming off the curb on another side, they're like shocked I stopped. I think, you know, it kind of goes to our signs and just more people taking ownership and educating, you know, our citizens on basic traffic laws. You know, when we started the meeting, we were talking a little bit about all the distracted drivers we see with phones. You know, I also see plenty of boneheaded kid moves, pedestrians, you know, on the wrong side of the road or going 3 or 4 wide on their bikes. You know, there's some other answers to that, but for the inexpensive of trying it, it might be a nice pilot in those 2 spots to, you know, worth you know, $100 or $200 to give it a try again. And I would bet no one in our community, those sign holders are sitting in one of those sheds over there. There's a chance of that. So, I mean, I'd be open to trying a pilot. I don't know that it's a big answer. I'll also share at the corner of Valley and Brewery and Thinnison Brewery. You know, I take a lot of negative feedback for the flags that we put up from friends and neighbors who complained about it. And that's all you're going to do is put them. And so I think you'll get some of that garbage with the flags. Flags aren't the answer. If people would just stop at the darn stop sign, you wouldn't need those 2 flags there. And so my opinions are a little mixed, or my thought process is a little mixed, but I would support a pilot and try it out, I guess.
Guess I've got a couple thoughts. I remember when we had them, so in my mind, pilot's done. I mean, they're there to help pedestrians feel more confident in crossing the street. Well, you know, if they're not having a headlight on or a headlamp on, if they're not wearing something reflective, and being you know, living on Main Street, I see people sprinting across that highway with cars clipping. If it's a green light, you know, coming from the lumber yard, as they're rolling east, they come around that corner fast. The flasher that is there across from old coaches. And that's there for reasons of the past. That doesn't make any sense for that to be there, in my opinion. That is what it is, and we had that debate on, you know, when Highway 14 was done. Where I get nervous and I see the most is across from the bank, so it's on my corner of Center, and you got the apartments across the street, and there's not one sign that says pedestrian crossing there. It's clearly marked if you're on top of it, but nobody ever knows because they come flying from the lights from the lumberyard going east or west. And that's the most dangerous area. And I've seen kids and pedestrians, lots of dogs, and they're all walking kids toward Park School, or they're coming across to the bank. And that's just a dangerous area. And there's nothing that says pedestrian crossing. I have no idea why.
Just going over to walk on the boardwalk, I mean, that
Yep.
wonderful boardwalk, walking area, and yeah.
Yep, there's not even a crosswalk there either.
The
So-
flashing lights, they're on Main Street, right?
Yep.
There, you said there's only two?
No, there's 3, 4.
The
I can
flashing.
There's 4.
Cause I've only noticed, well, the ones that, I guess that traffic, right? It's the one right by,
There's one by Dottie's going west to east.
Yeah.
Dottie's, and then there's by across from Ballwigs, so Midtown Construction.
and then there's one, it's by,
Then there's
is that by Chuck? Like Chuck's
there's one
the
at
art?
There's one at the bowling alley.
That's a flashing light by the bowling alley?
Yes.
Yeah,
And then there's one by
Chuck's,
Chuck's,
Super
right, if we're
Center.
going west on the left.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
4.
But my understanding is those were strategically placed, separated during those times,
They
right?
were, and
They couldn't be any
the
closer.
board advocated for more.
Yeah,
at
they
the time I
couldn't
was
get
on it,
any
yeah.
more.
So
We
my
were told
biggest
that's
pain
where
point
they're
is there's a crossing as well, and I just saw it again tonight. Someone had to lock their brakes up. It was somebody crossing with, dark clothes on, but now it's getting dark earlier.
Mhm.
And there were across from, that would be Valley. And there's not one there. And that's a hot spot because people are coming in hot trying to merge.
And there's a crossing across from Mob Tech's Pub
Yep.
and the apartments. There's no signage.
No,
It's just, it's on the road, but there's no signage, there's no,
that one's almost so dangerous, there shouldn't even be any crossing. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's at the
It
corner,
is
it's
what
at
it-
the
yeah.
bend there.
yeah.
And
No, I
it's
agree.
a very dangerous
That's the worst
spot.
spot.
Yeah.
Always across the street.
So,
So there is Main Street, and I think about the Chamber, I
Mm.
think about downtown, pedestrian, we want more events down there. I don't think it hurts. I mean, what's the negative of it? I don't know.
well, there's no negative.
Because I know we
Yeah.
would walk that twice a day across that highway
Mhm.
and we would grab it every time. And I know the people in that area would be grabbing it, whether they're, going to the bank or going to the school. I just don't know the downside. And I'm thinking from a liability standpoint, if it doesn't even say crosswalk on a major highway, why, there's some issues there.
I think if you guys are in favor of this, I think the next logical step would be obviously to maybe table it and then come back with locations of where that needs to be, because I think that you'll have to present the actual locations to the village.
Yeah, well,
board.
that location's definitely one. I
Mhm.
think we can all agree on that.
And are we talking about signage or we're talking about
We're talking about
lights?
the flag
Just
program.
The flag
All-
program,
Yes.
Because signage is a whole nother thing you gotta go through DOT.
DOT.
This you don't have to, right?
No,
right, we
This
can
is-
do that,
No,
okay.
this is our own.
I mean, I would be in favor of doing 2 or 3 pilot spots. I think, I agree.
Unless you guys can come up with a list right now of, so I'm thinking around St. Francis, around Park Elementary. I think we should definitely.
Well,
I
my
mean,
2
that-
spots were the thinnest by St. Francis.
right.
I grew up on that corner. It's, I used to put my life in danger.
Dennis Street at St. Francis.
Thinnest street of St. Francis. And
Well, it's
what's the
Dennis
street?
and, Dennis and,
Center.
And Center. Street, I mean.
Dennis and Church, you're thinking.
Thinnest and Church.
Okay, Dennis and Church,
Center and Main.
Center and Main.
And that, if.
I
what's
would
the
say
one by
it's
you,
either
Russell?
Valley or
Or
by UCandis.
What's, is that Mill Street?
Mill
Street.
Street.
Mill
Mill
Street.
Street
Mill Street and what?
and
And,
14 in
Mill
Maine,
Street, Maine.
Mill Street in Maine,
Main.
cause that's,
And that's part of the ICH trail crossing.
I still think we should, all the complaints came from this intersection. I think we should Church and
in
Church and Brewery.
That intersection.
It is very,
Cause I feel like when I
That
when I move
intersection.
up and I see, and then it's just, I can't see, I don't know if there's
Is
a,
that 4?
if there's
Yeah,
a
that's
bush
fine.
or a tree right
Yeah.
here, but coming, I'm coming this way. And I'm like, it just, it just kind of, it's not
I mean,
my favorite intersection.
you guys can make a motion to put them in those 4 locations. And then I would pass it on to the board. They're gonna ask where the money is coming from. So I mean, the holders are, they're probably somewhere. They've just been taken off. And they're probably not a whole lot of expense, I would imagine, from Jerry and the guys. And as far as us goes, it'd be about, you know, $40 per spot. And we have that grant that we could use to cover that.
I think those four would make the most sense.
The only other idea, that's just for reaction, curious, that they do have some flags that have some type of reflection
Yeah.
on it,
That was my.
And that's what we want.
and that's what we'd want.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, it's now's the most dangerous time.
It's a dark
Orange is,
at,
orange is
what,
great, but
4:30?
I hate to say.
I mean, really, it's a dark at
it's dark
4:30.
all the time.
David does something, he's home by 5.
I mean,
so-
that'll
5:15.
that'll probably increase, obviously, they're the plain ones that are the orange ones. I'll just look for, you know, something more reflective and so.
That sounds good.
I'll make the motion that we do that.
Randy's gonna make the motion. Do I have a second? Okay, so motion Randy, second Kevin, for supporting a pilot program for the flag program in 4 spots in the village. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I'm
Aye.
sorry, did you want it to be pilot? I thought we already talked about it not being a
Oh,
pilot,
I
that it's
don't
not
have
gonna, because I think if you guys say pilot, that means that kind of gives the
Yeah.
understanding that it might come back off.
Yeah, let's use a different word. If you guys are okay with that in the
Yeah.
motion.
Yeah.
I have a motion and a second to implement the flag program at these 4 intersections in the village of Crosspoint.
That's what I said.
Okay,
So,
Randy and
just say
Kevin.
aye. with James. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same.
Okay.
Passes unanimously.
All right, future items, the recognition of Scott and Lisa, I'm not gonna put it down as a discussion point. I think we can cover it probably in your
Yes.
cover. So we are having a party for them, so I will be recognizing them there with, you know, with a plaque and things like that, so,
You said January 7th.
yep,
Is that a Saturday or?
it's a
something?
Saturday.
Saturday.
And I can send that all out to you
Yeah.
guys. I just need to tweak some things and make sure that it's still okay with Justin and the fire department, so. So, yeah,
That sounds good.
I don't have any other discussion points right now. And I know that we're gonna move on to scheduling a meeting. My recommendation is that we skip one in December, being that it's the holidays and we don't have anything major to discuss, and then come back in January. By then, we'll probably have something.
3rd Tuesday of January, good with everybody? I am in full agreement of skipping the December meeting. We all have plenty of end of the year stuff, so does the board. 3rd Tuesday in January, let's just take a quick look.
Plans January 17th.
Tuesday, yep.
Yep.
All right.
And so Thursday or Tuesday, January 17th looks good for our next meeting.
And are you guys thinking to change it from 7 o'clock to 6 o'clock? Is that what you were suggesting?
Or 7:30, either way.
I work till 6 o'clock.
You work till 6.
It doesn't, I mean, it doesn't matter to me. Earlier the better, because I'm usually here at 8 in the morning.
Right.
I'm okay with
That
7
makes
o'clock.
sense. It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll just keep the time at 7.
All right, we're gonna keep it at 7, and 3rd Tuesday,
Deliver.
next meeting is January 17th. Is it working the way I'm letting you all know? Like
Yes.
text or whatever, and so you guys are aware of it, just as a reminder. I'll either do it on the day of or the day before. And then I've just been sending you guys the agenda item.
That works.
So that works, okay,
Perfect, yeah.
all right.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will second that.
Well, second.
First that, first that.
I'll make a
second that.
motion to adjourn.
I'll
Candace will
second
second that. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimously.
Okay. Stop recording.
So